Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of the Field and Garden Podcast. It is your host and friend in flowers, Lisa Mason Ziegler. Glad you have decided to drop in. And friends, if you want to learn more about the work that we're doing, head on over to thegardenersworkshop.com, where you will find a fully stocked online garden shop, online library of courses, videos, blogs, connect with our sister podcast, and even connect with our live gardening show that happens several times a week. We would love for you to keep in the loop, and the best way to do that is to sign up for our farm news. And you can do that in the show notes as well as at the bottom of every one of our web pages. So friends, I have come a long way with my fears. And what I've really learned is that fear is frequently rooted in what we don't know and just an overall general lack of information. Both problems which are very fixable. So before we jump into what I'm thinking of as fueling our fear by not knowing and a lack of information, I want us just to think about something, and that's like realizing that being scared is the autopilot that our brain goes on when we face doing something we've never done before. Okay, I'm going to say that again. Being scared is the auto response of our brains when we face doing something we've never done before. It's like its job in life to protect us, right? I mean, that's the brain's job, to steer us away from those things that scare us, literally so we don't die. I mean, when you get down to the bare basic facts, right? Because our brains are wired for survival, not necessarily success. You cannot gain confidence until you actually do the thing, and we show our brains that you're not going to die. And once you do it, your brain's going to say, oh, okay, you can do that thing again and again and again. I mean, honestly, that chemical that makes us get scared just doesn't happen once we do things again. I mean, isn't that what practicing is all about, right? So does it help you as much as it helps me to know that there's actual science that makes us scared? It's like there's not, I frequently reference the boogeyman under the bed. I had a big brother that would frequently tell me about the boogeyman. So that was always something that when I think of scared, that's the first thing my mind goes to. And, to know that our brain reaction is to protect us is what it boils down to, a natural response. And we just have to show and teach our brains that it's okay. And that then this starts like this domino effect, that we gain confidence, and that confidence grows within us, right? It makes such good sense when you think about it as practicing. Just like, and I know I've mentioned this before, pianists practice, ball players practice, everybody practices. And it's all about wanting to do a good job, but also it's to overcome the fear of not doing the good job. So, keeping all this in mind, I want to look at 3 fears that really stood out to me in a recent master class that I led. The name of it is Where to Sell Your Cut Flowers. And part of that master class is a Q&A. And after I, run through the training, I ask, what is scaring you? What's holding you back from starting your flower farming business? And I love doing this because it's so affirming, first off, because it affirms my own fears. It's like I'm not the only person that's afraid of stuff, right? And I want us to look at these. So these are the 3 fears that stood out in the comments from this class, and they align with what I hear so often from other people that are dreaming or just beginning or even seasoned flower farmers, what their fear really is. And here they are. Number 1, The fear is that the flowers are not going to be good enough. Number 2, not having enough flowers to commit, meaning, to say, yes, I'll come to the farmer's market, or yes, I'll start selling to florists. They're afraid they won't have enough flowers. And then number 3 is not knowing what to charge. And, here's the absolute headliner good news about all 3 of these fears. They are simply squashed by learning and doing it. Knowledge, education, continuing education, all 3 of those are pretty simple, there's actually steps you can follow, right? So let's take a look at them step by step here. Number 1, those flowers that are not good enough, and this fear is based on what usually is playing out in our mind, not reality. And it may go something like this. You see yourself walking into a flower shop, and a florist looks down at your flowers and then looks up at you and says, do you really want me to give you money for those flowers? Y'all, that's exactly what I was thinking. That's what I was afraid of. That's what was going through my mind. Or maybe you are seeing in your mind selling at a farmer's market, and, people are walking by and a little group of people stop. They pick up your bouquet, they look at them, and then they squinch up their nose, kind of like they just smelt a rotten egg, and they put it back down and just keep on walking. Is this kind of what's going through your mind? Literally, I know, because those are the things that were going through my mind. It's so funny how quickly we go straight to the swamp, right? Based on absolutely no facts. Again, this is our mind just working against us. So, friends, what are these fears rooted in? It's because you're not confident in knowing what a quality flower looks like and what it is, right? And to eliminate this fear, you simply learn for every flower that you grow what the proper harvesting and conditioning process is for the maximum vase life. And just a little side note here. This is one of the reasons that I recommend to my students that you don't start out as a flower farmer growing 40 different types of plants. There's so much you need to learn about each and every plant and flower that you're going to grow, right? You start out growing 10 or 15 different types of flowers so that you can learn all of these types of things to build your confidence in knowing what a quality flower looks like. So you don't stand there just kind of feeling like you're standing on a tightrope and you're about to fall off at any second. So you're going to learn for every flower that you grow the proper stage to harvest, what that looks like, and then what steps you're going to take following that harvest by the conditioning steps and how you handle that to make those flowers continue to open and to last the absolute longest in a vase, right? When you know this, you don't have to look to some, unknowing potential customer for affirmation that your flowers are great. You know it, and you can talk about it when and if they ask you questions about it, because guess what? You're prepared. This fear is so easily squashed with knowledge and actually doing it. So let's look at number 2, not having enough flowers to sell. I frequently use an image of, it shows our building packed full of buckets, and there's 5 of us. Some of us are sitting on the floor. Kelly, who is very pregnant, is holding a sign up that says no flowers today. And it is all a big joke, punching fun at me because of my absolute constant fear of fearing that I don't have enough flowers. So I'm saying, A, you are not alone in this fear. And I literally faced this fear the entire time I was growing, but in a good way. You can flip that right on its ears because my business focus, and I made this a point of my business, and I teach my students this, was always to have more customers than you have flowers available. And I came to understand that fearing not having enough flowers was a far easier fear to face than having a bunch of leftover unsold flowers. Do you know what I mean by underestimating what you have to offer florists, or how many bouquets you could deliver to a commercial customer? By underestimating, then you have a bunch of leftover flowers. But you can overestimate, and that's what I lived on that edge all the time. And I can tell you, it just got easier the more I did it and the better I got at it, right? And I see what fuels this fear for many. There are frequently folks that want to start a flower farming business, but haven't yet grown a real cutting garden. Many are avid gardeners, have beautiful landscape beds, or they're flower lovers, but they've never grown a bona fide working cutting garden. They have literally no basis or clear understanding of how a cutting garden functions and produces. So I totally get why they're scared of not having enough flowers, because they have not one iota. Now, I 100% believe that a person that has grown even a small cutting garden is ready to jump in and start. Even if it was just like maybe one of our 3x10 cutting garden plans, and work that little garden through a season, whether that was spring or fall. You planted it, you harvested it, to see just how productive a real cutting garden is when it's tended as a cutting garden, which all is totally different than a landscape. And this little bit of experience gives you such mileage to lean into when you decide to start your flower farm. So this fear of not having enough flowers is definitely rooted in the lack of practical experience in this kind of situation. And once you've cut and tended a cutting garden and you've experienced how it functions, it brings in a whole level of confidence and a jumping off point of how much your little garden can really produce, and really helps you to face this fear. And it's a fear, it never went away from me, but you get better and better at it and get more and more confidence. So, I want to just add a little side note of, this lifelong fear I've had of not having enough flowers. Through suffering, that under committing myself on orders. And again, that would be like saying a florist list. That would be like listing less than I had because I was so afraid that I would sell more than I have, right? So through under committing myself on orders and then having a lot of flowers left over because I have underestimated, this is the path that led me to become a great overestimator, listing a smidge more than I thought I had available, because I will tell you, historically, we always had enough. It always worked out. There were really more flowers than I thought. But this is kind of the same thing, how it works out. You know how airlines always oversell their seats, or at least they hope to. They do it because usually there's always people that don't show up, that, they have connecting flights that don't make it, whatever. And those few empty seats from those people that didn't make the flight, that's their profit margin. That can really make or break. And, sometimes it doesn't work out, and they're prepared to offer some really juicy rewards to us that are willing to give up our seat when in fact everybody does show up. Because I underestimated in the past and had unsold flowers, I learned to rely on my garden more and more, and I had the confidence in my garden to pull me through. And if I did happen to oversell some bunches of flowers, I could always run out and literally cut a few more stems from the garden. Or if I had to say to a customer, oh, I only had 9 bunches of that flower. So I brought an extra bunch of maybe something in that color or in that shape of flower. You know, I gained so much confidence by pushing my own personal limits by doing this. And each time I did it, it just got easier and easier, you know, to commit and sell. And I'll tell you, when I ended, you know, the years of us selling all of our flowers to florists and supermarkets and all these things, by the time those last few years, you know how we estimated? Literally, my sister and I, she would walk with a clipboard and I would walk up and down aisles and eyeball it. I got that good at it. We were I was that experienced because this is what I'd been doing for years, and it never crossed my mind what will happen if I don't have enough flowers. You don't even think about that anymore. Something that paralyzed me in the beginning. So, gaining experience will squash that fear, and then you jump, right? All right, let's take a look at number 3. Not knowing what to charge. You know, this fear is squashed by gaining knowledge, and also something that people, I find, don't want to do, trust in the market. And it boils down to doing your homework, researching for your market, and then for your market, meaning the type of business you're selling to or customer you're selling to, and what your location is. So I am frequently asked, you know, what would I charge for that, or that bouquet, or that bunch, or that stem? And why you rarely hear me talk about what we actually charged is because it is very different for every business, for where they're located, what markets they're selling in, whether it's retail or wholesale, and of course, you know, what does it cost to grow that flower or that bouquet to actually make a profit on what you charge. I mean, there's just so many unique pieces to individual businesses for a baseline. And again, I'm saying that's a baseline. That's kind of where you start. But I will add that it's not nearly as complicated as we tend to make it. There are several ways and areas to research to collect information for whatever market you're selling in. And after collecting that info and really looking at it, you just draw a line in the sand and make a price, right? This is the one golden rule, you never undercut the market pricing. When I say market, when you look at what other professional growers are charging in your region and area, there's a reason for that, y'all. My choice is to never, ever undercut. I always align myself with the local professional pricing, you know, and I would also bring into that equation, what does it cost me to grow that XYZ flower? Maybe I'll see that to fall in line with the rest of the world. And you don't have to, I'm not saying be a copycat. I'm saying most people's tendency is to say, they're selling their bouquets for $25. Shoot, I'm going to sell mine for $15. Don't do it, y'all. Don't do it. So sometimes I look at a flower and maybe it is too needy. It takes too much labor to be able to sell it at what the market price is, that mine would be so much more that customers would say, maybe I won't buy that from her. And I will tell you this, if you overprice the market, you know, you feel like your flowers are so much more valuable, then people are going to question everything you do. So it is a really important step, but it is simple and you trust the process. Another consideration when you're starting out is you don't face a lot of the expenses that you're going to face in the future as your business grows. You know, it's another one of those cases that I frequently highlight to my students is we don't know what we don't know. It's like sometimes you don't even know what questions to ask because you have no clue what you're not doing or are doing that is so bad or wrong. You know, I think that it's the fear of not selling our flowers that kind of push people to undercut, along with them thinking it doesn't cost me that much to make that bouquet. Friends, don't fall for it. If you only, so fall for it if you only want to sell flowers for 2 to 3 months and then never do it again. But if you want to stay in business for the long haul, you have got to trust the process of those professional people that have gone before you, and know that those prices are based on facts. Facts that you may not even be aware of yet, and expenses that you're not even aware of yet. Doing your homework and stop clouding the picture by asking 42 people that are in the same place that you are what they think you should sell for. Gather your facts and move on. Moving is the number one quickest way to succeed, is to just tackle the work, get it done, whether you think it's right or wrong, and move on. So those are the 3 that folks really struggle with. My flowers aren't good enough, I'm not going to have enough of them, and how in the world do I price them? And so you can definitely squash all of those fears by learning and facing it down, overcoming it. And you will become, the first time you do it, it's going to be so scary, but then you get a little confidence. Then you're a little more confident the next time you do it. Remember, the pianist, the concert pianist, practices all day, every day for one concert, right? And you have to just keep doing this over and over. Volume is better than quality, y'all. In this, it's like you just have to do it. You just have to do it. We can train our brains to react to success and not to just survive. It's what you need to do to become a successful flower farming business owner, honestly. And facing down fear, I tell this almost every time I think I talk about fear, but again, I'm just gonna mention standing on the shore of a big, deep ocean, it looks like, and you've got to go across it to get to the next step. And you're terrified that you're gonna drown, you're gonna sink, you're gonna go under, you're gonna die. And then when you finally get the guts to stick your toe in, guess what? It's nothing but a mud puddle that's about 1 inch deep and 1 mile wide. And you just have to get through it and then rinse your feet off and move on. You know, friends, if you're listening to this the week that the episode came out, which is October 29th of 2025, I'm doing another one of those free masterclasses of where to sell your cut flowers on October 30th, and I'd love to have you join me in this free masterclass. The link to join is down in the show notes if it is still available. And friends, all of these fears that I talked to you about were all the same fears that I had when I started out back in 1998 as a novice flower farmer. And then once I gained more and more experience and developed my teaching skills, that's what all led me to launch and create Flower Farming School Online, the basics, annual crops marketing, and more. And not only is it a comprehensive course that will lead you through all of these little pieces that stack up to become the big picture of your flower farming business, but it will help you face down your fears and to become more confident. You know, my school also has a private student Facebook group where you can ask me questions. You know, if you can't find it in the course information, and it is keyword searchable, y'all, then you ask me. And you also have the support and network of thousands of other students that are on that same journey. And friends, I would love to have you become a part of my Flower Farming School family. So we can tackle this kind of stuff together and show you that you're not going to die. You can overcome it and succeed and build a flower farming business that you can have for years to come, that sticks, that's profitable, that doesn't overcome your life. And so friends, thanks for joining me here today. And remember, everything we do it for you and your journey on growing cut flowers, whether for pleasure or for profit. And you can find everything over at thegardenersworkshop.com. And friends, until we meet again, ciao.